Dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
For anyone reading the Bible looking for an example of leadership, the life of King Solomon stands out as a must-read. Not everything that he did was exemplary. In fact, much of what he did was problematic. And yet still, God writes straight with crooked lines. And looking at his life as it's given us can teach us lessons both good and bad, things to do and things to avoid in our own leadership. We begin our series on King Solomon by looking at his prayer for a listening heart. Hey everybody, glad to be back with you again and happy to have this chance to look at the life of King Solomon. Now, we look at many biblical figures for inspiration, and we should. But one of the neat things about the Bible is that not everyone in the Bible is perfect. That doesn't sound familiar, right? Because who amongst us is entirely perfect? And yet, can God still use the imperfect? That's the question. The answer is yes, he can. I personally find that very refreshing because when we look at the life of most of us, we would like to think that we're still doing some good, even if we make mistakes. And when you read the Bible, you read the way that God uses all things, even people who have fundamental flaws, in order to advance his plan. Now with Solomon, it's not just that he made fundamental mistakes. He did a lot of things good and a lot of things right. I'd like to look at his life with you because by looking together at what God teaches us in the Bible, we can always learn good things about what he expects from us in our own leadership. Now, his life itself is, a magnificent thing. He was the son of David and the one who inherited the throne of David over all 12 tribes of Israel. Now, if you don't know your Bible, you don't know really why that's significant, but it is because Solomon's son is going to be the one, Rehoboam, who actually is so dastardly that the 12 tribes of Israel split in two. And you have the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. This means that Solomon's reign was very significant. He was reigning as the political and religious ruler over the family that God had wanted to be the salvation of the world. So with Abraham, God promises descendants, more numerous than the stars in the heavens and the sand on the shore of the sea. And he promises that this family would be the source of God's covenant, his covenantal love that would extend through them to the entire world. So to govern over that family as it grew and became a political reality with hundreds of thousands, millions of people in it, means that his rule had a significance for God's plan of salvation that would reach even to us. The decisions that he would make as the ruler, the king, who was, governing the people that God had chosen in order to be the instrument of his mercy and his salvation for the whole world. Talk about a lot of responsibility. I mean, scholars don't know the exact dates of his reign, but they put it anywhere just slightly after the year 1000, right? Somewhere around 970 or so, and lasting for about 40 years. During that time, Israel prospered. I mean, you had just an input of wealth and kind of glory in Israel, financially, economically, because of Solomon's great wisdom. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is that quality of wisdom that we can also ask God to give us in our own leadership. But he had a wisdom that was not only emotionally intelligent and socially adept, it was also a profound knowledge of the things of this world. And the Bible doesn't hold back. I mean, it speaks about his scientific knowledge, his architectural knowledge, and the practical wisdom that he governed. It was so impressive that the Queen of Sheba came from distant lands just to be in the presence of Solomon. And when she saw all that he had done, she was struck with awe. And yet, like so many, his kingdom collapsed. It collapsed under the weight of corruption. that Solomon introduced into it because he was leading with a divided heart. Just like so many of our own leaders today, he knew the truth and he had an incredible a gift of mind, fortitude, and strength in many different ways. He was a gifted man. Yes, but gifted leaders don't necessarily become good ones. That gift can stay something that is only an intellectual excellence and doesn't pass into the moral excellence of the life of virtue. And this is a very important point. You can see this in so many of the stories of great figures in human history who were great because, well, they knew things. They had exceptional knowledge, exceptional experience, great ability, but there was half of their heart or a corner of their heart or some part of themselves that did not surrender in the realism of who they were, their decisions, every aspect of their life, their intention, their moral will wasn't fully surrendered to God and wasn't surrendered to that truth. So whenever you find a divorce between what we know as true and how we choose to live, be careful. It's not because you're extremely knowledgeable or competent in today's words or skilled as a leader and you can do conflict negotiation and you can do strategy and you can do great vision work and all these things that are so important to leadership. That is not enough. A Christian leader has to go beyond the power of their mind, or what we would say, the skill set that we have, in order to really put everything we have, our emotions, our choices, the heart, the love of our lives behind that. Otherwise, we're susceptible to falling in really very base behaviors, things that we would be ashamed of because, well, they're just so basic to who we are. With Solomon, for example, he was not a very controlled or disciplined man when it came to his affections. Let's put it that way. And that's kind of putting it mildly, okay? Well, we'll go into Solomon's downfall in a future class here, so I don't want to dwell on it too much right now, but I want to make this point because in our world today, a lot of us, we can get by because people don't really know us, right? I mean, our spouses know us, our children know us. Well, what do they think about us as a leader? That's much more telling. It's much more telling to be judged by people who know the totality of your life than it is to be judged just upon your position, your title, or all the things that you've achieved in the world. And in the end, those things are fine and they're wonderful gifts. But if they're not rooted in character, well, we're open to actually using that same gift that God gave us in ways that don't glorify God, or that even could be evil, that could be twisted, and we wouldn't even know it. It's even the devil, it says in the Bible, even the devil parades as an angel of light. It's not just because you're the whiz kid that can solve everything, or everybody thinks you're the most amazing closer on deals, and you have that incredible gift to be able to go in and create business or come up with great ideas. That doesn't mean that you are accomplished in what really matters in your leadership. The foundation could be cracked. The foundation of a leader's skill set, the foundation upon which it stands, is a leader's character, his moral or life. The choices that we make, what we do with what the Bible calls our leb, L-E-B, right? It's the Hebrew word, and it means our heart. And for the Hebrews, this was much more than our mind or thoughts. It was who we are, the deepest part of our identity. It encompasses every aspect of who we are. And this is why God says, you will love me with all of your heart and all of your mind. Right? Today we can get by with just saying, well, I can love God with all of my mind. Look what I did for him. I accomplished these great things. Yeah, so did Solomon. He probably accomplished a lot more than you did, But in the end, he fell. And he fell in a royal fashion, no pun intended. He fell in deeply. And his fall led to the downfall of his dynasty as his sons picked up on his bad habits and ended up perpetuating the evil side of Solomon, and to the point where the kingdom was divided and was ruled over by a series of very, very bad kings that led their people astray. And it all started with him, with that aspect of his life that he did not submit to the demands of the love that he was supposed to have for God. He allowed brilliance to eclipse the need that he had for consistency of character. And it's a very important line. Now, of course, not only did he build a temple and he had all this prosperity, he also wrote books in the Bible. According to tradition, and it's just tradition, but there's 3 different books of the Bible of which he could be said to be the author. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Songs. Now, leaving aside whether or not that's correct or, all the disputes we can have among scholars, the point is his life was very significant. And I want to study with you today what made his rule so great, the gift he received from God of a listening heart.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
Now, if you want to read about the life of Solomon, the place to look in the Bible is 1 Kings. Okay, starting in chapter 3 is where we're going to pick up today. But in 1 Kings, you've got the documentation of his life and all that he accomplished. And so you go back and read that. I want to focus in with you right now, though, on what I think is the key to his whole success, and that is his relationship with God. And it's given to us in 1 Kings chapter 3, and just a beautiful story. Solomon goes to worship in front of God at Gibeon. And Gibeon was a place outside of Jerusalem because they had not yet built the temple, where he offered sacrifices to God. And then God came to him and spoke with him directly. Here's what it says in 1 Kings. It says, "At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And God said, 'Ask what I shall give you.' And Solomon said, 'You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart towards you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day.'" His son, of course, is Solomon himself. So very interesting. Solomon says, listen, the great thing about my father David was 3 things: faithfulness, second, righteousness, and thirdly, uprightness of heart towards you. All right, all 3 qualities, he's saying, are things that are in accordance with God. So Solomon is saying the king, what the king should do, the ruler, that is you and me, right? Any of us who are in places of leadership, we have to be careful. Our first reference point needs to be God. What an amazing thought that is. And I think it's absolutely true, of course. If your reference point isn't God, then what will it be? It'll be something, in the end, less than yourself. A king that is not pointed towards what is greater than him will end up serving what is less than him. And his rule, instead of becoming a blessing for people by being aligned with their moral flourishing and for what the people really need, will become a tyranny, where the king in the end manipulates his power in order to get the people to serve him. This is exactly what happens with Solomon, as it happens with so many. And it's because leadership doesn't exist just to be exercised in its own right. We don't have power just to keep it. We have power to bless people with it. You see, this is the key. St. Thomas Aquinas, in his work, De Regno, or On the King, actually speaks about this, saying that this is the difference between a king and a tyrant. A king will use his power and authority for the flourishing of his members. And that doesn't just mean economic. That means economic, that means health, that means social, yes, and all of that with a view to what is spiritual. So the king has to say, listen, if I'm here to rule you, it's to govern you towards your full flourishing. And that includes, of course, the gift of yourself in love that only God can rightfully command. And Aquinas says, if the king doesn't do that and says instead, well, there is no reference point to my rule, he's going to make the staying in power, his rule, his reference point. And how many of us do just that? We don't really know why we're managers at work. We don't really know why God gave us a business. We're just using it for our ends. Well, be careful, because what Aquinas says is the moment you start doing that, then the people become relative to you. Right? So suddenly I need my people to like me, to approve of me. Otherwise I won't be a leader. And there's, of course, some truth in that. But foundationally, even deeper, no. Sometimes you have to correct. Sometimes you have to enter into an argumentative stance, even with your followers, for their benefit. The leader's first obligation is to make sure that he's focused in on the transcendent good. And this, of course, is what God is. And so focusing in on God, having faith in your leadership, doesn't take anything away from your capacity. In fact, it calls upon your capacity. It demands your capacity for the right reasons. God comes into our leadership as the answer to the question, why? Well, if you don't have an answer to that question, that's a good one. The why of your organization won't be strong enough to bear the weight of all of the financial benefits that greed could get, competition could bring about, that division could yield to someone who doesn't really care why they're there. They're in it for themselves, just like you, the ruler, who forget to put God first. But Solomon goes on, right? And he says, and now, O Lord my God, this is 1 Kings 3:7. You have made your servant king in place of David my father. In verse 9, he goes on to say, give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people? Verse 10 goes on to say, it pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this, and God said to him, because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. Wow, what a gift, right? And God commends this petition of Solomon, saying that you've asked for the right thing. Now, I just wonder if God were to come to you in a dream and say, ask me for anything that you want, would you ask for this? I think it's really very telling of the purity of Solomon's heart, that at this point in his life, Solomon said, I'm asked by God to ask him for anything. And I'm going to say the number one concern that I have is that I be a good ruler for the people. And at the heart of being a good ruler for the people is this phrase, that I have an understanding mind. Now, in English, that usually, understanding, we think of mind as an intellectual thing. And so we think of it kind of as an abstraction, something that's cold and cool, our ability to know truth. But for the ancient Hebrews, it was something much more profound than that. The word that he actually says should be translated as a hearing heart, a listening heart, a heart that can hear. I think that's what a profound thing. That's the literal translation of the Hebrew that King Solomon prayed for. God, give me a heart that listens. And God was so pleased with that he said, in fact, I will, and it will be a heart that listens to what is right, so that you'll be able to discern in your role as a leader what is right. I just want to pause for a second there and throw this back at you. Think of the importance of that question. When we talk about being a leader in Jesus Christ and being a godly leader, bringing faith into our business, this is what it looks like. What does faith in business look like? It looks like a leader who is steadfastly focused on doing what is right for his people. I think that's an amazing thing, right? So King Solomon is an example here for all of us that the thing we have to cling to before anything else is the answer to the question why, making sure that it's the right one. Why are we doing this business? Why are we, having family reunions? Why do we celebrate birthdays in the family leadership? Why do we in our society want to make sure that our children are protected from terrible messaging that's put out there? Why should we limit the cell phone usage of our little kids? All these kinds of questions. Well, the answer a lot of people give is, well, there is no reason why. You should just do it if it makes you feel good. And I just smile about that. And I say, wait a second, that is an answer to the question why. You're literally saying why, right? You're saying that the why of everything is our own pleasure. Well, the religious person steps in and says, there's a deeper answer to that question. The why for everything? It's to know and to conform ourselves to a good that is as deep as the ocean, as broad as the sky, infinite and pure. And that is why we are doing what we're doing. To do what we're doing as a response to become like in our own organization, in our own family, in our own world, as much as we can, the perfect goodness that is in God. Right? This is what Solomon asks for, and it's what we should ask for too.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So in 1 Kings chapter 3, we're looking at this dialogue between Solomon and God, and we're seeing that Solomon asks God for the gift of a hearing heart. And it's translated by an understanding mind, right? Because that makes sense. It's this ability that Solomon's going to have to discern. Right? That word is to separate. That's the etymology of to discern, is to separate out what is secondary or what is wrong from what is primary and what is right. And this capacity of the leader to do that is essential for any God-given sense of leadership. And right away, that expands our own understanding of what we're doing in business. For example, if you're in business leadership, or what we're doing in politics, or what role Christian society has to play in the general, messaging of our culture, the arts, for example, what we produce. Christian leadership unites two different aspects. And we have one foot in heaven with God and the other foot on the earth in the things of this world. And we do the things that we do in the world for the sake of our union with God and the world's union with God. That's what makes us so profound in our leadership. Not only do we have to hit the bottom line and make it increase, not only do we have to hire people and develop them, but we have to always do it with this perspective of the transcendent values that we are fighting for and that we're leading people to. We get to inspire people to bring everything that they have into the workplace and not just leave it at the door, that they can become better people by working for better leaders. And we do our best to provide that kind of leadership to them. Now, if you start to look at some of the commentaries about what that means to have this listening heart, right? You see what some of the saints, some of the fathers of the church have written about it. And what they come down to over and again is that the first thing that a listening heart of a leader listens to is God, right? So to have a listening heart means to, as you look at the contingencies that form the complex life and landscape of a leader's mindset, right? You do so with a gaze that is coming from the ultimate perspective. A good leader, for example, it has a distance from all of the things happening that allows him to or her to steer what's happening towards its goal. If you think, for example, of an architect, you've got the people in the field that are laying the pipe and putting the wiring down for the electricity as they build a house. And you have the architect who's studying the plan. And the architect's role is to guide the construction of that house according to what needs to be there for that house to, stand in storms and in wind and in everything else. They've got their perspective of their plans and all their knowledge that's then guiding their implementation. Well, the perspective of a Christian is that every human being is sacred in the eyes of God, that we're made for heaven, that family is important, that a person's welfare is more important than their salary, right? And so taking that perspective, then we go into the contingencies of strategic planning and alignment of workflows and then budget processes and everything that we have to do, but we do it with wisdom. We have a listening heart. It's our role to not be drowned beneath the waves of the next tasks to be performed. We have to have our head above the water. And the first thing that we do, the most profound thing, is having that moral righteousness of heart to say, I know God and I'm trying to obey his commandments. And in the light of that, then, I can have a decision on certain key aspects of what we're doing that will be of true benefit, the biggest benefit for the endeavor that I'm undertaking. The second part of the listening heart is to be able to listen in the hearts of those who are following us to what's really going on. Empathy, right? The ability to see things from their perspective. The ability to understand the troubles that are behind the problems, right? Because everybody comes to us with problems. That's why we're the leader. It's like no one epitomizes that more than mothers. I think about mothers in the home, the most amazing leaders that there are, Because, I mean, every problem is theirs for the first 12 years of a child's life. And the child just runs to mom and she's supposed to know how to do this. Well, the key of a mother is that she's there and that she's listening. She's able to see, well, what's really troubling you isn't this. What's really troubling you is this, even if the child's not even able to voice it. She has a listening heart, if she's a good one, right? Same thing with the fathers, there's different examples, but they come to the same thing. God wants leaders who care about their people and who solve not just problems, but troubles too. Now, you might not be able to do that directly. It's not even appropriate to do it directly, but indirectly, you sure can. You're insisting on a good workplace environment and a clean culture and correct behaviors and things that are positive in the workspace. You're indirectly allowing your workers the ability to thrive, to solve the deeper problems that they have in their life because you have a listening heart. So this is such a blessing, and it's something I want to just leave you with, is that this call from God is that you have, as a leader, the ability to bring the grace of Christ into your people's lives. And you do this directly or indirectly, but you do this by embracing your position to listen, first of all, to God, and then to really listen to the needs of your people. Study after study will show the same thing. People follow people who care about them. And so by demonstrating that care, being attuned with where they're at, understanding their deeper issues, we're going to be more effective. We're going to not just solve problems, we're going to raise up leaders ourselves. And not only does this benefit the bottom line, but it also benefits the eternal soul. What a position, what an opportunity we have when we lead in Christ.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.